Really our goal for treatment with interventions in the whole spectrum is to provide a customized treatment care package for patients.
When you look at the conditions we treat, they're common and they're prevalent. And I think we've been learning more and more about how prevalent they are over the last decade. A combination of technology and expertise now has brought to the forefront therapies and treatments that really make a difference.
The joy that this profession brings to me is the ability to alleviate patients' pain. It's very rewarding to have that interaction with the patient.
The very fundamental question that we have to begin those conversations is this: what is it going to take to keep the American people safe?
I'm actually really quite proud of the things I've accomplished my first couple of years. Now, I could talk about becoming a chairman as a freshman, which is extraordinarily rare. I could talk about moving to appropriations, which is, as a freshman, is quite rare. But more than that, it's this. I grew up on a farm milking cows, 10 kids. And my dad was an Air Force pilot, and the reason he got out of the Air Force and bought a farm was he wanted to teach his kids how to work. He told us that. He said, the reason I did this was to teach you how to work. And he did teach me how to work. And I look at how hard we've worked to help people in my district. And let me give you some evidence of that. More than 300 cases where people have come to us and said, I need help with Veterans Affairs, I need help with Social Security, Medicare. More than 300 that we've worked and helped and individually set out that casework for them. 50,000 letters we've answered. I've had more than 30 town halls. I think we've had more town halls far and away than anyone else in the delegation. This is a great one. We have met individually or in small groups with more than 5,000 people. And at the end of the day, what I do in DC is great, but if I'm not helping the people in my district, then I think I'm failing as a congressman. Anything that we can do to have a decrease in federal involvement in our public lands and an increase in the state and the local involvement is something we want to support. So Ken Ivory's bill and that piece of legislation, we absolutely support it. And we're doing what we can to educate people back in Congress, because it's going to take a congressional action in order for that to happen. The good news is that, as I mentioned, I think in the roundtable, but let me say it again, 394 pieces of legislation that the House has passed that are sitting on Harry Reid's desk. 70 of those bills deal with job creation. Dozens of them deal with energy. They deal with reforming health care, reforming Obamacare. They deal with all of these issues that affect people. All of them sitting on Harry Reid's desk. By the way, most of those are bipartisan. They're not Republican bills. The majority of them have Democratic support as well. So we have to have friends in the Senate, allies in the Senate, a Republican Senate, I believe, in order to move that legislation. Now, kind of the bad news, if you will, and that is we have to temper our expectations, because if we do win the Senate, if the Republicans win, it's going to be by a thin margin. It might be a 51-49 Senate. Maybe 52-48. But as you know, to pass legislation in the Senate doesn't take 51 votes, it takes 60, because you have the filibuster rule that still applies. So on one hand, we're going to push legislation that has broad bipartisan support, Keystone Pipeline, some other things with energy, some other things with repealing some of the financial services regulations, Dodd-Frank, some other things with the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. Those, I think, will have some such bipartisan support, they'll be veto-proof or close to it. But after that, then the field narrows, because you got to have those 60 votes. I think we have to ask ourselves one fundamental question. It's the only question that matters. Every other question has to spring from this, and that is, what does it take to keep the American people safe? Answer that question, and then develop your strategies and your policy based on that. And unfortunately, this president hasn't done this. One of the great failures in foreign policy of generations is his unwillingness to negotiate the Status of Forces Agreement in 2011 that would have kept 11,000 to 12,000 troops that the commanders were insisting that he keep in Iraq. Just like we kept them in Japan, just like we kept them in Germany. And had we done that, ISIL would not be in Iraq like they have now. They would be entirely contained in Syria. The second thing was we eliminated our ability to influence President Maliki, the Iraqi president, who as soon as we left, and I mean within days of us leaving, he fired most of his senior commanders and replaced them with his buddies. It'd be like me firing a commander and putting my 16-year-old daughter in charge of a division. They had no idea how to command and how to lead men and how to fight a war, which is why the Iraqi army crumbled the way it did when they started to fight ISIS. So let's decide what it's going to take to keep people safe, and then let's go do that. And whatever authorization it takes to do that, let's give that authorization. And the final thing I'll say is I'm a veteran. I think you know that. 14 years as a pilot in the Air Force. I have family members that are still in the military. I know how hard the military has worked for the last 13 years. I know how weary they are. I know how tired their families are. But once again, we're going to the military and we're saying to them, we need you to do this mission for us. They'll do it. They'll do it professionally. They'll accomplish that. I know they will. And God bless them for doing that, because they're the ones who've carried the brunt of this for going on more than a dozen years.